Good afternoon, friends. Steve Benoon here with our good friend Debra Tavares here. Today is January the 25th, 2025, and I hope that's the right date. Deborah, I can't see very well even with glasses on right now, but today we're going to be talking about the deliberate destruction of America and the world and how they're going to do that there. And that's kind of taken from the book of the late Dr. Lorraine Day. It's a recommendation that Deborah shared with me today. Deborah, we've got a lot of information to cover here. Thank you for coming on again. So many people happy that you're here. And by the way, when you're hearing the clicking, because I had several people comment, what's the clicking for? I'm actually trying to work my way through the information that Deborah has sent to me. So I'm back and forth trying to find different things or search for things. So hopefully this time I got most of it already there and won't have so much clicking this time around. So Deborah, thank you for joining with me again tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. We have so much to cover. The exact book of Dr. Lorraine Day that everyone could look at and order, because she's now deceased, is called The Deliberate Destruction of America and the World. Who's Doing It and Why? By Dr. Lorraine Day, D-A-Y, like night and day. I would recommend all of you order this and get this on your bookshelf. We're also going to be talking about the massive poisoning on this prison planet that we all now are finding we're trying to survive on. It's massive poisoning. And I'm going to go over the fires. I know that, Steve, I sent you a number of photographs about the fires. The takeaway with the fires, of course, is to understand that this is massive microwave and laser warfare. We're in a fifth-generation warfare where no longer soldiers and guns and tanks need to be used. And this is being demonstrated on what we're seeing with the fires, not only in the Pacific Palisades and in Los Angeles County and the length of time that this was all burned, but this is where other weapons are being used with the extreme cold events that have happened now in Florida. You were telling me, Steve, that there were many inches of snow, and it never snows in Florida.
No, the thing is the snow falling in Florida is such a rare thing, Deborah. It is like once every 20 years or so, even if that often. I remember, of course, growing up in the Panhandle area and also southern Alabama. We never, I think twice in my life I saw snow. Once was 2 inches, second time 3 inches. And it's just not very frequent. And yet this snowstorm hit, and it hit starting in Dallas, Texas. Not Dallas, I'm sorry, Houston, Texas. They got 3.4 inches of snow. Then it went across going through Louisiana, and by the time it hit Louisiana, all the way up through New Orleans saw, I think, 8 inches of snow. Mississippi, about 8 inches of snow. Then Mobile got hit with 9-something inches of snow. Pensacola was hit with 9 inches of snow. Milton, Florida, where I also have a place there from my dad, was 10 inches of snow. All of these snowfalls were record-breaking. They have never seen snowfall like this. It went all the way to Tallahassee before it finally calmed down.
And, of course, we know it's all weather weapons, and I was just talking to a good friend who lives in Wales today, reporting on the record-breaking winds of over 100 miles per hour hitting Wales and the north of Ireland in the past few days. And I want to remind everybody that we talked about the patents on creating the wind, and I'm just going to go over that quickly right now to remind everybody, unless in the event you did not listen to our last interview. But Steve, how would they get to the last interview? Because I'm going to be leapfrogging through some of that, but not very much. I'm going to get into the international 15-minute cities, the building codes that have been adopted internationally. So how do people get to our last
The last video we did there together, Deborah, it is, you just go to it. The name of that video is Exposing Man-Made Disasters, Unveiling Hidden Agendas. And that was done on January 17th, 2025, 38,000 plus views. And it's on Israeli News Live YouTube. That's where you can find this video at, and definitely if you watch it, share it as far and wide as you possibly can.
Yes, please do. I want to just reiterate the patents about the microburst that's now creating the wind, that we understand. That literally, we found this patent November 12th of 2012, and we didn't find it then, but we've exhumed it, and it was dated back then, the information. So they talk about the microburst winds and how they're electromagnetic radio weapons, and that's what they are. They're tornado-like high winds and gusts and microburst vortex, and they whip all the trees and the houses. The destruction is enormous. They're causing power outages everywhere. People keep saying, well, we're going to have an EMP. That's an electromagnetic pulse. We don't need to have an electromagnetic pulse. They're shutting power down through all of the destruction that they're creating with the weapons that they have at their control now, all the weather weapons. But the winds are artificially spawned, precision-targeted microburst vortex created by scalar electromagnetic weapon systems mounted on cell towers everywhere. And the U.S. patent is number 7629918. And Raytheon, under the operational command of control through Lockheed Martin, is, one of the largest defense contractors. So again, the high winds, which are literally shaking the walls of houses, destroying everything, knocking power lines down, causing trees to fall over. I want to say this about the trees, because I know, Steve, that you're linking into this video a talk that was rediscovered that Rosalind Peterson here in Northern California was a very outspoken woman, and that's literally how I learned about the controlled weather, was from Rosalind Peterson. She ran a couple of websites called Agriculture Defense Coalition and California Skywatch, and I was distributing her flyers and brochures everywhere I went, and found that people would, when I'd hand them California Skywatch, they would tell me, well, I don't live in California, I don't need this brochure. Expensive, beautiful brochure that she spent a lot of money on explaining what was happening to our blue skies. They weren't blue anymore. But then as a result of that, I talked to Rosalind about not saying California Skywatch, because people were not wanting to take the information. So she and I agreed, and I came up with the website called toxicsky.org. So I linked into her, and while she was alive, I was promoting toxicsky.org, and but linking to all of her websites. And what I can say about toxicsky.org now is everyone needs to go there. Please watch the movie called Unconventional Gray, Grey, by Michael Murphy, and understand what's happening and has already happened with the weather. Again, I run 3 websites, stopthecrime.net. You will find many of my current radio shows posted under videos when you open up the site. And I also run primarywater.org. The takeaway with that is we're not running out of water. Water is renewable. It's created by the process of hydrogen and oxygen, and as it turns to vapor, it surfaces to the into cold and hot springs, and that's where geysers spray up out of the ground endlessly. The deception of all that we have been deceived with is all based upon a weaponized environment. And Steve, I know that we had talked about primary water amongst ourselves for a long time, I think it would be really good to do a show and talk more in depth about the water delivery system.
Yes.
Because many of you may know that the current administration just visited Southern California, the Pacific Palisades fires, and has promised endless amounts of water that they'll bring down even from Canada and Northern California. And we need to talk about the reality of that. It's all just a massive deception on how they can move water by getting to primary water and getting wells. There's a couple of wells above Los Angeles, the Gorlock wells. It's where the last fire was burning north of L.A., closing down one of the major freeways. It's in the Tehachapi's, and Paul Power drilled these two wells, Steve. One was only 65 feet deep. The other one was 100. Now, these were private wells, and each well pumped more than 1,000 gallons a minute. And this is all on a geological site of volcanic, and this is where the waters easily seep up. Now, Los Angeles could develop more wells there and deliver more clean, fresh water through a different delivery system than through the aqueduct. But this is another radio show entirely. I guess this might lead into why there wasn't water in the Palisades and in Altadena where the fires were burning. I said this, I believe, on the last show, but it needs repeating. I noticed that here in 2017, Steve, when they were burning us up in Sonoma County, and we lost 5,000 homes on October the 8th and 9th of 2017. And those were electromagnetic fires. We didn't really realize that at the time. We just were hearing the firefighters saying they've never fought fires that moved so fast. Football fields, by the moments, it seemed, is how they were describing them, moved fast and hotter than ever before. They're not equipped to fight microwave fires. And as much as they try and as hard as they work, they cannot. They don't have the equipment. We're sending these hardworking, life-saving firefighters out there to work against something they're not even told what they're fighting against. And I can tell you, the PTSD of not being able to save communities and watching them just burn in full is really going to cost heavily amongst the firefighting teams worldwide, because they're not given the right tools, because they're not told the truth about how these fires really operate and how they're microwave fires.
Well, Deborah, is that like in the? I've got the photo up right now where it looks like these boxes are on fire there with the girl in the goggles and the yellow top there, where it's on Sky News. Is that one of those type fires? Is from a microwave fire?
Yes, thank you for showing that. Let me explain that. What you're seeing are wooden posts. It's a barrier on the side of a road to keep cars from going off. And there is a cable going through those wooden posts. They're quite large. The posts are quite large. And the cable is going through it. The microwaves heated that cable up to such an extent that it ignited the wooden posts. That's why those posts are burning. We saw, and you can't see it in that picture, but across the road there was a guardrail, a metal guardrail that was lagged onto wooden posts, and the guardrail was on the ground. We saw that here in the Paradise fires when we went up to do criminal crime scene investigations. We know they're microwaves, and no one can argue against that, because we see many blue structures. I sent you a number of pictures, Steve, showing blue and white, and how those are not burned because, the blue and white reflects the blue lasers, and the white does too. And that's why people are thinking, they've got to paint their roofs blue or their houses blue. Well, we're in a fifth-generation warfare now where they're using microwaves, and they're burning us up. This is the plan. They're burning everything up. So just understand that they're changing up the methodologies of the burns, but consider seeing the colors that are surviving the blue lasers at this moment. Doesn't mean that they'll survive the change up in technology going forward.
Right.
But we're watching. What we're watching is being live streamed like a daily show, watching the destruction and the heartache and the sorrow of the people that are losing everything. And they're being told it's a lie. I sent you a photograph of a billboard that has now been shown on television and different newsprint here in California.
This is climate change right on the billboard.
Yeah, it's what they're showing is a billboard, and on the billboard it says climate change, and behind it you see the fires raging in the background. And then what you don't see is the wind then is blowing, and the billboard the material of the billboard that says climate change is being blown away. So now they're selling the idea that this is climate change instead of weaponized weather warfare and fifth-generation microwaves and lasers being used on us. In fact, I recently talked to somebody and said, it was just a stranger, and I was standing there, and I said hello, and they said hi, and they said, how are you? And I said, well, I'm in despair about the fires in Southern California because I'm here in Northern California. And this person said to me, well, the good news is at least they caught the arsonist. So I want to say that they're not catching arsonists. They're deflecting the fact that these are microwave weapons, and they're blaming one-up people that are walking through the communities that are mind-controlled. And we talked about this in our first show, and the level of mind control that has now taken over these people that can be literally cued, they can be triggered to do what they're told to do. And I talked about that at length, and I will just remind everybody again so that you can go on to stopthecrime.net, type in Aquarius, Aquarius, and just read this. I'm going to read a couple of things in this, Steve, just to bring people back, because I know not everybody listens to everything. But I hope that you listen to these things, because on page 1 of the Aquarius Group Operations Briefing, which is discussing the planned chemical sedation of the population, and it talks about electromagnetic radio wave and microwave pulse mind warfare. And it has had great advantages in that the desired subject or populations has no knowledge of the procedures being used on them. So we're all being hit. In fact, initially when you opened up the show, Steve, and you said something about your vision, you couldn't see well or something like that.
Right.
I want everybody to know, because I've had a lot of people contacting me about failing vision and vision loss, and this is due to the blue screens that we're looking on our cell phones. Also, all the frequencies that are being deployed. We're being made to be blind, and our eyes are deteriorating. And I can only say that this is a big win for the ophthalmologists, because they get to perform all kinds of procedures on our eyes. In fact, there's a new ad that runs continuously. It's called GA, and it means geographical atrophy. Geographical atrophy, and they're talking about these shots that you can get in your eyes that will help the inability for eye loss. They say there is no cure, but it will slow it down. Throughout this ad, it says GA, geographical atrophy. The shots will slow it down, but the side effects could be retina detachment, glaucoma, other eye diseases, and even blindness. And so I can tell you that this is microwaves. These are your phones, called weapons, that you hold up near your faces. These are the smart meters attached to your homes that not only cause burns when they're going to burn an area, because the smart meters have lithium-ion batteries in them. You've got to get them off your homes. You've got to. In fact, many people during the Palisades fires were talking about explosions that they were hearing. Well, right now in Monterey, in Northern California, in Moss Landing, one of the world's largest lithium-ion battery storage facilities has been on fire for days, days, days. The levels of poisons from this fire are unbelievable. Literally, if you are in the vicinity before these poisons dissipate, it literally eats your skin off your bodies, causes burning, eats concrete. It's very corrosive. This is what they're selling us as a result of climate change, that we have to start using EV cars. And so the explosions that I think people were hearing, and I don't know for sure, but it makes sense to me, in the Palisades were EV vehicles blowing up. Now, EV vehicles would certainly be a component of increasing the fires, because once they blow up, those fires don't burn out. And they're microwave fires, as you know. You can't put those fires out with water, but the water exacerbates the poisons, and that's another enormous problem with EVs. We'll go into more of a discussion on EVs as we move through a few more programs, Steve, because, again, we are being absolutely poisoned. We're on a poison prison planet trying to survive. And I will talk about the fog. I know many people worldwide were talking recently about the low-lying fog. This is a methodology that can be used easily to base the areas where they're going to target next, because they have to, and they have been basting areas prior to attacks with current poisons and accelerants that also afford high combustibility beyond even the lasers and the microwaves. And I talk about constantly what people need to do. We need to become more consciously aware of our surroundings, because you can literally become attuned to a weaponized weather attack, whether it's a hurricane. It doesn't matter what it is. If you just start paying attention to the increased electromagnetic frequencies in the atmosphere, many people can feel it. It causes prickly skin. It causes itching of the eyes. People feel a heaviness. And when we're heavily chemtrailed, absolutely, people are getting depressed, and it's very poisonous and toxic, and then they hit us with some type of an event. So about the fog, I found this out recently, and I'll just tell you what this is now. It's called Serata, Seratia. It's a bioengineered bacteria, and it literally gets into our bodies and attacks our nervous system. This is what is also part of what's in these overhead aerosolized death dumps that I call them.
Right,
They're death dumps. They're adding all kinds of poisons and chemicals. But I want to talk about this very quickly, because I'm just looking at it right now. I want to talk about the autoimmune diseases, because in the past, there was about 1 in 700 that experienced autoimmune diseases. Now it's 1 in 7, the stats are telling us. And these are bio-weaponized bacteria. And here's the things that it causes. It causes MS, which involves the nerves. It's involved in Parkinson's, which is, again, the Schwann, SCHWAN cells, and which covers the nerves. That's what Parkinson's is looped into. Speaking of looped, it causes lupus, which is skin. Also, rheumatoid arthritis, which are the joints, and Alzheimer's, and the list is on. These are bioweaponized bacteria that is assaulting the human populations everywhere. This is what is happening. And so I want to go into some other things, because I know you're going to be rolling some photos through, and I'll describe those pictures as you do that, Steve.
All right.
But, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so some of the things that we're looking at here, Deborah, you've also got one here called Officials Say 130 Suspected Victims of Possible Energy And I'm sure that's energy weapons, at least I would think so, on Fox News.
Well, I don't know specifically about that. I just sent that over to you. So we could move on. None of the news media outlets that I know is deviating from the illusion of this being climate change, including our current administration. That is horrific, because I think some of the most unbelievable circumstances that humanity is facing is the use of weapons, microwaves, and lasers, and more. The saturation of populations for mind control using energy weapons, which I was talking about in the Aquarius operations briefing, which is causing untold, irreversible health effects, but then also, again, all the frequencies and fires, and all of the adopted policies that are in play, that our mayors across the United States and other locations have all adopted. And we're literally living in a world that is so poisonous. The air, the water, the food, I know all of you hear that repeatedly, but it's important to understand a few things that I just learned. I got an insert in my trash bill last week, and I thought it was a rather horrific statement. And I'll read it to you, and then I'll tell you what I learned about this. They talked about recycling charges for food waste and organics. The cost is going to go up because those costs are no longer being subsidized by the taxpayers. And they say that they are going to start charging us, and that they have to recover edible food from the waste stream to help support organizations that serve the food to insecure populations. And I thought, what? They're going to dig through the trash cans and serve this spoiled, rotting food to populations? So I called. I said, what do you mean by this? And then I got the explanation. Here's the explanation. They said that they will collect the food waste. They will sort it if people throw plastic bottles, or they named palm fronds. I don't know why they said palm fronds, but they said that will be taken out. And they will clean the waste, and they will then compost it and send it to farmers. Now, I want all of you to think about the food waste. There's toxic chemicals in it. There's aspartame. There's canola oil. There's artificial flavorings. There's poisonous sugars and preservatives and every other thing you can think of in food waste. And now they're sending it to the farmers as fertilizer. This is the same thing they've done with poisoning the world's food production area, not just the heartland of California with all these fires and the dioxin and all of the other weapons resulting from the fires through the smoke, etc., but PFAS, that's PFAS. And that is unbelievable. Here's what's happening with PFAS. They're using sludge from the wastewater treatment plants all over the world and sending it out to the farmers to fertilize their fields. They are poisoning the entire food supply entirely. I mean, that's when they're not allowing raw sewage waste to just go down into the streams. Now, I want to add this because I was thinking about it because, again, I grew up in Santa Monica and in Malibu, and so these fires have really triggered the evacuation that I went through when I was only 11 years old. So I'm watching my town being burned up. In fact, I sent you, Steve, a photograph of the base of Big Rock, and that's the mountain I lived on when I was evacuated in 1961. And across from that current photograph on the Pacific Coast Highway, all the homes, those gorgeous homes along the beach between the highway and the ocean are gone. They're gone. And my husband just happened to see the road sign, Big Rock Drive, and I gasped because much of what I had around me, albeit certainly things have increased building-wise since I was there, but it's horrifying to me. It's re-triggered, re-traumatized the evacuation for me, as many people are going to suffer that kind of loss. And
we're looking at that right now. We're looking at that very picture there. It's the before and after that you sent. Uh, Beautiful homes. And you know, this is when you know, Deborah, something's up because it's right there on the edge of the water. No
Yep.
reason for a fire to really get to these houses. You got a road that can easily block, it's like a fire lane, so to speak. But they burn down anyway.
Well, they do. And I want to add, I sent you the picture of the fire retardant being sprayed on neighborhoods.
Yes,
This
I
is
have it.
poisoning. This is a toxin. This is a neurotoxin. This causes cancer. And they're using more fire retardant now than they are water. And it's poisoning the firefighters. In fact, I knew of a number of people here in the fires that we investigated where it killed their farm animals. And of course, I took pictures of the earlier fire in Malibu where I could literally see the trails of previously dumped retardant running down the hills. They're poisoning. They're hitting us and poisoning us and sending in looters. That is the plan. That is what they do. That's what has always been the methodology around a planned attack, and not having water, because none of the areas have had water either. So I want to talk about the intentionality, the long-term repercussions of the poisonous air, because many people are going to die from the toxins in the air alone. You don't survive dioxin, you don't survive asbestos, you don't survive all the metals. To even consider rebuilding, and the current administration was telling people yesterday as they visited the Palisades, they want them to be able to get up there themselves and start clearing their own lots immediately. This is a Superfund toxic site that really, honestly, for decades should not be rebuilt on, because it is all poisonous. But if you want to depopulate, you allow rebuilds. It's poisonous. It's toxic. All the death dumps of the retardants, all of the chemicals from the lithium-ion batteries, these chemicals stay in the area and in the ground, and they waste in the air. We're going to see many, many people die in the years ahead as a result of the poisonous smoke, because they're panicked, they're heartbroken, they're really in a daze, and they're wandering around in this toxic air, unaware that this is the second disaster that has been created for them that they face. So I can only say we really have. I also talked in the last video too about disaster bonds and how they're now financing the enormity of disasters that are created. There's trillions of dollars hunting for a place to make money, and they're making money on disasters. You can go to stopthecrime.net and you can watch the video. Billions are made on disasters. Just watch that video. And I'm looking at an insert I just received. These are all things now cropping up because of disasters that are being created. I'm looking at an advertisement that I received, and it says they specialize in storm cleanup. Well, the storms are caused. It's created. It's created. Another thing, another throwaway I got from our local water company here in Northern California. It says it's talking about retrofitting. Now, I've talked about the requirements to retrofit your homes for years. That's why you're seeing money being spent on retrofitting public buildings and stadiums, etc., etc. What do I mean by retrofitting? I am talking about replacement. Now, this is not a bad idea, but people are being priced out of their homes as it is, with increased insurance costs, increased cost for utilities, both electricity and water, and in instances gas. I heard from a friend, I may have said this on the last show, but over a week or so ago, I heard from a friend in the UK, because Britain is still very reliant on gas for fuel heating. They haven't made the full transition off of gas. And they only, with the storms coming in and the severity of the cold weather that they're experiencing there, it was said they only had a week's supply of gas for people to heat their homes. So this is the importance of having backup capabilities of heating. While much of what we face we can't overcome, but we can do things to harden up to be a little bit more capable of surviving in the short term of all of this. But retrofitting, so those are mandates coming in on all properties, and here's what that is requiring. Again, I don't say that this isn't good. It is good if you have the money, but the homes are not built to withstand the weather weapons called climate change. They're just not built. Plus, I'm going to say this, Steve, this is going to sound horrific, and it is. But with the use of microwaves and the fact that it can heat all of the straps in housing, the rebar, the nails, everything metal or steel that's used in building of homes, our homes are being taken apart because of the microwaves. They are literally being taken apart. And so getting back to retrofitting, some of the things that will be required are dual pane windows, also extra insulation. Again, not all, these things are good if you can afford it. Changing out any gas appliances or gas water heaters to become all electric. There's many other items too, but that's just a few. And it's going to be mandated by your cities. They're going to come through with code enforcement, and they're going to identify homes that are not compliant under the reduce your carbon footprint or reduce CO2, which is insane in and of itself, because we need CO2. The plants take in CO2, and that's our oxygen. The fact that people are going along with this and fundamentally and foundationally not realizing that we're being built upon weapon systems. That is what we're being built on. And our children are being taught in school all these lies. But sadly, I think that the weapons have increased to such an extent. I don't know how long our kids have.
Deborah, one thing I'll mention too real quick, I pulled up, as you said these things, I pulled up articles on it. And when I pulled up the one on retrofitting the homes, an advertisement of the EMP shield popped up on the right corner. Well, oddly enough, after our interview, I interviewed Roddy Meyer. He has a private group, where he helps people to become energy independent, self-sufficient, not relying on government, anything, no electricity, etc. Anyway, we were talking about your interview, and he said, I talked to him about the smart meters and how they use those to even start fires.
Yes.
He said, I will tell you one thing, and he said, you might share this with Deborah. He said the EMP shield, when installed on a home, will prevent a smart meter from being able to start a fire in the house. He said they can't use it against you. He said because it's got like a kill switch on that thing that's faster than the smart meter.
Well, I would have to research that. I have looked at a lot of the preventative ways in which people are being told they can shield their smart meters. Honestly, I haven't found that to be the case. I know that people have used a lot of the paint on the inside of their homes to help reduce the frequencies, but we have scalar waves. We have so many different kinds of ways in which they're targeting us. And
if they can't get you one way, they're going to get you the other way.
That's exactly right.
No, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the use of very low frequencies because in the NASA document that I would like to talk about more in detail on a follow-up show, it's about the effects of the extremely low frequencies and how it's just dismantling our DNA. It's damaging our DNA and increasing reproduction, of course. It's increasing the free radicals within the cells, which can lead to DNA strand breakage. We know all of that. I've had these different symptom lists up on stopthecrime.net for years, telling people what this wireless is doing, and then the pulsed aspect of all of the wireless. And now the Wi-Fi and all the cell towers, and the fact that we know the cell towers are exacerbating wind conditions because of that that patent that I talked about.
Right.
But I wanted to talk about some other aspects of what we're into. And I'm just going to hit upon this now. I'll go into more detail. But many of you that have been following the fires in the Palisades and in Altadena in Southern California, you're hearing about the admitted plans by the governor to reimagine and rebuild a 15-minute city. And that's becoming now just talked about in the open. So, and people are saying, oh, that's what they had planned on doing, and that's why they burned it up. Well, yes, that's part of all of it. But you need to understand, we were land developers in our business, our working lifetime. And I know that these cities have been long planned because we knew from the Wildlands Project map that we talked about last time, Steve,
Right.
where 50% of the United States alone was going to be off limits for human access, and that there would be human settlement zones. And those human settlement zones are pinpointed around the country, and it's where people will be imprisoned and incarcerated within kill cities of high frequencies and complete and utter surveillance of your thoughts, your actions, seeing what you do every time you do anything. That's what's now on the forefront and rolling in on top of all of us. So I knew that there needed to be some international templates that were already in place for all of these build-outs of cities. And I'll tell you what I discovered. They're telling us the larger cities because right now there are many cities that are designated in the U.S. and overseas as well as 15-minute cities, and they're telling us that Portland and Seattle and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Cleveland, Ohio, and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Chattanooga, Tennessee, they're all smart cities. They're all designated for high-density building. Now, I'm going to tell you what they say in these international templates. Now, what they do is they create these templates. All of the mayors and all of the controllers get together and have meetings at Davos and the World Economic Forum, all the mayors locally. They're all spurring all of these build-outs, and you have no control over this. Many of you are seeing 3- and 5-story apartments for rent being built everywhere. I'm seeing them by the thousands in my area, and yet we're still told on the news continuously that we have a housing shortage, and there's no mention of all the build-outs for rent because we won't own anything, as we've been told. We'll only be renting. We'll be renting our insurance, our possessions like our furniture, etc. We'll even be renting our clothes. But that's for another conversation, but that's all happening. And my husband and I went and toured a number of these high-rises that are too expensive for the average people in our area to rent. A very small 1-bedroom, 2-bath apartment that is fully wireless in every way is $2,500 a month, and that does not include paying for your individual use of electricity and water or an additional parking spot, because parking is very limited. They don't want you in cars, as you know.
Right.
They want you in lethal electric vehicles that will explode and burn you up and burn the cities up. This is the plan. These are all weapons. But as I look at this international template that's already in place, and we're already seeing these zoning laws changing, and we're seeing massive high-density construction everywhere, they talk about the 4 pillars of why the 15-minute cities and what they will achieve, what they will promote. They say that it will promote proximity, diversity, density, and ubiquity. Now, ubiquity means this: omnipresence. It means existence everywhere in all places at the same time. So what I'm looking at when I look at these international templates worldwide that are coming to your town is we're looking at satellite build-outs. Just like in the United States, we have three main electric grids. We have the East Coast, the West Coast, and then Texas, and those are the electric grids. But they're doing microgrids with all of the with much of the electricity now. They're doing microgrids in these smart construction areas, and they're building these out in every city, because that way people will be moved slowly after disasters, after elimination of dams that supply the water in the cities. There's no alternative to delivering water as they start to take out dams through the weapons systems, or just the fact that they're saying the dams are old, they're not seismically retrofitted, they have to be, they're dangerous, they're going to collapse and flood out the entire city. We've got to take it out, and you're going to have to truck in your water for a while into holding tanks. That's what they're doing right now to be able to rebuild in Paradise that they burned out in 2018, because the infrastructure for the reservoir was burned up, and it would have at the time cost well over $50 million to reestablish the watering system there. And in order to issue building permits, they allowed people to rebuild if they had a sizable topside water tank filled. They have to truck in the water. Now, you know the water is toxic and poisonous. You don't know who is behind earning the money trucking in all this poisonous, toxic water that people are drinking, bathing, washing, everything with. But let's go on into these cities, because it's being sold to us to they talk about the environmental benefits. Everything about the environment is a lie in the context of climate change. And they're selling these cities to us to end poverty, to end hunger, gender inequity, while protecting the planet and its resources. That's all a lie. They're incarcerating us into kill zones, into areas where we will be contained. They're geofencing us now with these SUN surveillance systems that they're deploying throughout the United States. And I asked my friend in Wales today to find out what kind of system they're deploying in Europe, because it might not be the company called SUN Surveillance, but they're deploying these systems everywhere. In fact, Steve, I had intended to send you a picture of me standing by one of these SUN surveillance systems when one of the representatives for that system was telling me they were connecting it, they were making it go live. But they talk about these international cities and the results, more sustainability, equitable, and healthier world, an international healthier world. They talk about, and of course we know that these are World Economic Forum ghettos of death. These are prison camps. They're not about climate change at all. And people that have been psyopsed and taught in school and are horrified about climate change, like the Extinction rebellion that's happening in Europe, and the misguiding of all the lies and the continued mind control that has beset our younger people, because parents use schools that teach disinformation for babysitters. So again, they talk about how they have instructions on how to build out and build back better, and the housing solutions. And these are being brought through and into our cities. One example, it's called the Housing Solutions Lab at New York University. So there's many universities that are giving information out so that people can create these kinds of prisons in all the cities. They talk about racial equity, increase in access to opportunities, and improve long-term health and well-being for all residents. This is an international plan that you just have been hearing about on the news, about the Palisades, Santa Monica, and the county of Los Angeles during these fires. But this is international. Now, here's an example. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, for example, we looked up the international building codes and what it says about Chattanooga. And this is going to be everywhere. This is going everywhere now. It's in process now because there are these smart cities all over the world at this point. But they talk about transportation projects will allow the city to monitor over 100 smart city intersections. So in the entire downtown areas of Chattanooga, as an example, installation of 86 smart city intersections and will lead to the largest urban internet deployment of its kind in the United States per the University of Chattanooga. These are coming out through universities and other places. But it talks about, in that instance, 4,500,000 is being funded by our federal government under the Highway Administration. So you need to look under Highway Administration for a lot of these plots that are being rolled out over us. They're not just through federal governments, they're through different agencies of the federal government that are set up to destroy the United States and the rest of the world. So they go on to tell us that you can live, play, and work, and bike and walk. This is how these cities of containment and internment camps are being sold to us. Many people believe in that, but they say that Chattanooga has become a living laboratory, providing researchers unparalleled tracking and mapping capabilities and next generation of transportation, including automated vehicles. And that it's the only city in Tennessee participating in the global G20 Global Smart City Alliance over major hubs. Other major hubs are coming into agreement. And these are through the mayors. Your mayors are converging in meetings and in uniformity with globalist plans. It's coming in through the mayors, but other agencies as well. We know that all the agencies in the United States are all supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are death goals. I'll go over them again briefly. It's very important to understand that you have to look up your Sustainable Development Goals, because when people say, where can I go to be safe? If you can find a place on this prison planet, this poisonous prison planet, that has not adopted the climate action plans, or AK Sustainable Development Goals, then go there. There's no place. There's no place. They've all adopted these plans. So let me go over some of the agencies. I can't do this enough because people really do need to understand the U.S. federal agencies. They're involved in much of the takeover. And all these agencies promote sustainable development goals. In fact, next time when we do our show,
I was going to ask you, Deborah, real quick. Is there something on your website that I can show as you're talking about that there?
You know, I hate to say this, but I'm going to. I have been so clobbered and so hit with inability to use my phones, to use my computer. The pulse frequencies take me offline all the time. I can't even. This is going to sound insane, but it all is insane. Yeah. I'm having trouble even accessing my website, Steve.
Deborah, I'm not surprised. I'm really not. I have another guy I know that we try to communicate back and forth, and we've set the only way we've been able to talk so far is by Skype. We have literally right there in front of each other on Skype try to call the other on a phone. Neither phone will ring, yet we can call anybody else we want. We've tried to text. Our text will not go through either way, regardless. So it doesn't surprise me.
Well, another thing, beyond the fact that that there have been energy weapons used, I'm now finding that that the U.S. Postal Service is involved in stalking and mismanaging mail. And what do I mean by that? I've had a number of people contact me that send you bills. We all get bills in the mail, and some bills are regular bills, utilities, what have you. And when you have it moved, that address where they mail your bills stays the same. Well, I'm getting people contacting me and saying it was returned for being unable to be delivered, and yet it was the correct address. This is happening now more and more. So I'm just saying for all of you.
Wow, that's amazing, because we have actually have wondered. We've noticed the same situation here, Deborah. Whereas, we used to get so much mail a week on an average, on a regular basis, and now it's practically nothing. And I've wondered. I even said it to Yana. I said I have a feeling that somebody's intercepting or they're sending this mail back. It's just too strange.
Well, it is, and a situation that occurred recently is getting a phone call from the insurance carrier saying that the payment is due like today. Where is it? And the bill was never received.
Right, exactly. Received.
So if you go in breach of your insurance, which is another real big problem, where they're using weather weapons, and weapons are insurance as well, because insurance is a weapon being controlled by those that control everything. If you don't have insurance, of course, all of you know that if you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance, or the lender will foreclose upon you. They will foreclose on your property if you don't have insurance. Now, in many instances, people can go to, they call it here in California, the California Fair Plan. You can pay 4 times the amount of what you've paid in the past to have less coverage. But many people are forced into the Fair Plan. And I can only tell you this is massive, massive moving us out of our homes and into these cities. That is what this is. We're not going to be able to afford to keep our housing. But I wanted to go over a list of some of the agencies involved very quickly.
Okay.
There's more agencies than just this, but we have to understand the agencies that have all signed on to climate action plans. In other words, all agreeing that we're using too much stuff and we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which is not true, to reduce our oxygen. So here are some of the agencies, just a few in the United States. The Department of Defense, all executive department cabinet members and departments. Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, Department of U.S. federal agencies, environmental protection agencies, cabinets and non-departments with under that environmental, the EPA, and National Aeronautics and Space Administration and all cabinets, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the U.S. federal entity under the department, etc., the U.S. Geological Survey. They go on to tell us that the Bureau of Reclamation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, they're grabbing a lot of land right now, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Water, Power Technologies, which is the Department of Energy. The Office of Water, the EPA. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The U.S. Federal Emergency Management Association, and Maritime Administration, or the Department of Transportation. These are just a list of some of the agencies that are literally worldwide, that are taking down the world, destroying this planet, bringing in the illusion, building a reality from more weapons. We're built upon weapons. That's
yes.
What's happened. We're built on weapons. So what do I mean by that specifically, Steve? Is the illusion that we're running out of water. So what did they do? They built in a delivery system of water that never needed to be built that way. They could have built it the way that Muammar Gaddafi built it in Libya, which he utilized the oil, profits for his people, and he built the Great Man-Made River Project. We'll go into more detail about water on another show, but I've got to get that out there.
Yeah, well, you also showed that picture of the 117 million gallon reservoir that was not even used during the fires whatsoever.
Yeah, let me explain that. This is very interesting. Quite interesting, actually, because I have a friend that worked for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and was actually involved in putting in a pump system when that reservoir was built. I think that was back in the 80s. That reservoir was built for additional water supply to the Pacific Palisades and areas as they were building more homes there. They needed to have that additional water system, that reservoir, Santa Ynez Reservoir. And presumably that had been drained because there was a cover, a cover over the water of the reservoir to prevent bird droppings as birds flew over that would cause poisoning of the water. And because that cover had a tear in it, in order to repair it, they claimed that they had to empty the reservoir. No, this is how they stage an attack. Now, are there other forms of water that can be used or could be used during that fire? Yes. They just didn't have enough pressure. The system in the water was never designed to fight that many fires. Maybe they could have fought, 6 homes
Debra,
with enough pressure.
You know what this reminds me of? Just like when Hamas attacked Israel, and yet they don't tell you that they took out all the armories only 1 week before the attack with all these small communities there. They removed all their weapons so they couldn't defend themselves. It's the same thing here. And tell me the bird droppings, they're worried about the bird droppings. Well, what about then up in the lakes and stuff that they use for water reservoirs to do like Atlanta, etc.? They got fish droppings, bird droppings, alligator droppings, and everything else in their water, and they're still using the water.
Well, they are. And that's a discussion we're going to have because the delivery system of the water throughout the world is set up on a weaponized platform of delivery. And when we compare what Muammar Gaddafi did in delivering primary water to well over 1 million people in Libya, free of charge, and it was clean, pure, unadulterated water. The water that we're all using is atmospheric water, as opposed to water that comes up from down below. We're the water planet. And the atmospheric water, we've all been taught that our water comes from rain and snowmelt. No, that's the evaporation of the water that comes up and evaporates from down below. And I need to really spend some time on this because Paul Power was a very good friend of ours. He was involved in drilling for primary wells. In fact, he drilled the 2 wells in the Tehachapi's that I mentioned earlier in the show for private use. And he could have developed more water for Los Angeles. But if people watch the movie Chinatown, you're going to see how they use the illusion of water to literally destroy farms and ranches and in Southern California. They took over the water supply. And that's why when the book came out in the early 60s to talk about primary water, it was called New Water for a Thirsty World. All of you need to try and get that book. I know I have it on my website. A New Water for a Thirsty World, written by Michael Salazar. And when that book was released, the water barons in Southern California rounded up as many books as they could find, Steve, and they burned them. They did not want people to know the truth about water. And we have to minimally, as we're still here on this planet, I believe we're obligated to get to the truth and tell people what the truth was. Whether or not we can ever do anything with the truth other than to know it and teach our children is another circumstance that we all face. But I can just say that we must prepare ourselves as best we can to be harder to kill for a little while, because that's what we face. That is truly what we face. And again, they've taught us repeatedly that we have to think global, but go local. And that's what I want all of you to take away with when I talk about these international building codes. People are stumbling onto them in their cities. In fact, in Marin, California, just right north of the Golden Gate Bridge, they've been discussing on the radio here how ignitable that city is. It's a county, Marin County, and there's lots of cities within the county. And they're talking about how it's ripe for fires. They're talking about how the roads are very narrow and the ability to escape would be very complicated, and it's very dry, and they have not had a fire through there in over 50 years. And then I go and I search Marin County, and I find out that they're creating the same cities that you heard about being created in the Palisades. And what I also find out is that this is CAL FIRE, and they have these throughout the United States. This one, our agency, is called CAL FIRE. And they're also supportive of the climate action plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and acknowledge climate change. They are involved in deciding, I'm sure that they're one of the many agencies involved in deciding what areas are most prone to burning. And then it so happens that it burns. So we're looking at a number of other areas in California that look like they're being staged for burns, if not this period of time, but soon. We're looking at Marin because they're telling us that. We're looking at Morgan Hill, and we're looking at areas right near Silicon Valley as well. So I can only say that the level of attack is on. The byproducts of the attacks are unbelievably unsurvivable in the long haul. And I think that people just need to understand what we're in, that it's a weapons system, and we're being certainly lied to continuously by the controllers. I want to go over one last thing. I think I may have gone over this a bit on our last show, but this is the importance of going onto the website, typing in the name of your county or city where you live, type in on your search bar the name of your city, followed by climate action plans or sustainable development plans adopted. And you're going to find these kill plans already in place. So here's what they're telling us that the climate changes are going to cause. And this is what they are causing with what they're doing with these weapons. They talk about the climate change effects, and then in the other column, examples of human health risks due to those specific climate change effects. So here's a climate change effect. Increase in extreme heat events. And they say heat-related illnesses, death, worsening of chronic health conditions. So I can tell you that last year, they were using microwave weapons in the afternoons here in Northern California. People were having trouble surviving, and there were a number of deaths attributed to heat events. This is going to become more common, more frequent, and it's also going to kill the trees. Many fruit trees are, because of the climate change, they're having mildews and funguses on the trees. The trees don't appear in some of the fires that they have not been burned, but all the foliage, all the trees are succumbing to the increased years and years of accelerants dumped on them called the persistent jet contrails or chemtrails, however you'd like to call it. Rosalind Peterson liked to call it persistent jet contrails. She didn't want people to call them chemtrails. And in that video that you've posted there, Steve, Rosalind talks about her discovery and how she found out about this tremendous and horrific circumstance. And then it also shows her speaking at the United Nations, talking to them about the concern of climate change. You've got to hear her talk about this. Again, she was a very dear friend.
And I'll include that link in the description for those that want to listen to it. I've already been listening to that video put out by Off Grid and Doug and Stacy there. And yes, I got it right here where she was speaking there at the United Nations. And oddly enough, I did exactly what you said, Deborah. I put that climate, what you said, I put in Tennessee, my county, climate action plan. And it says here, does not have a climate action plan.
Okay, so then you type in sustainable development plans.
Okay.
Or type in a town, a large town, like maybe Knoxville or something like that, because they all are moving forward with the idea that we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You could type in a large name of a county and type in plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They're maybe not making it so easy. Searches have changed so much since we've been talking about ways in which people can discover things. So
they do have, the state of Tennessee does have the Office of Sustainable Practices, and they have 3 primary service areas: business, community, and state government, according to what this says right here. So it is under the sustainability is what they have it under.
Yeah, so you could then find out the definition of what they consider to be sustainable. We'll go over that more in another show, because we really do need to go over this so that people realize these are international requirements. And I want to say this. Just because we're being told that the United States is pulling out of the International Paris Peace Accords doesn't mean that that's going to change anything. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah, Trump's not a savior. That's what you're saying. Let's tell it like it is.
Well, I could say that, yes. But I will say that pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords will do nothing, because we are being destroyed by weapons within our country.
Yes.
They're using fire, tornadoes, wind, every type of weather weapon imaginable. They're increasing the cost of everything, insurance, etc., and they're forcing people out of housing. We've got so many homeless everywhere. And then we've got the electric vehicles and all the lithium-ion batteries that are used as weapons, too. We have a delivery system of water that's highly poisonous. We don't need to grapple with Klaus Schwab, really, and the Paris Climate Accords, because we're already being destroyed from within, and that is what has already happened. So as we look at this climate change and the health effects, they talk about increased air pollution. Well, I've been talking about the air pollution from all the fires. Look at all the aerosolized overhead death dumps. Look at all the fog. We talked about that. But increased air pollution, they're saying this is what will happen. Increased respiratory illnesses and seasonal allergies. Seasonal allergies are created. That's why they call them seasonal allergies. That's all created from pollution. Then they talk about climate change effects of floods and droughts and wildfires and storms and changes in weather patterns. And they talk about how that will absolutely cause injury and death, respiratory illnesses, waterborne illnesses, foodborne illnesses, displacement, massive displacement. Look at the stress-related disorders that are now being caused. They're talking about setting up mental health agencies in the Los Angeles County area to help people deal mentally with the effects of what they've just been put through. So they talk about increased shift in infectious diseases as a cover. Of course, that's a cover for all the bioweaponization of all of the other forms of targeting they're doing. They talk about another effect of climate change are higher food prices and food scarcity. And they talk about how that will increase hunger and decrease nutrition, of course. and sea level rise, injury and death. So we know that they're using weapons along the coastlines. I've talked about that for years. I have a video up that I did a long time ago called Coastlines Under Attack. They are using weapons along the coastlines. And I wanted to say this too. We watched during the Southern California, Pacific Palisades, and Altadena firefighting crews, not only with the fire retardant that is a forever death cancer chemical that they were dumping on the houses and everywhere, but then they were also doing some ocean drops, getting some of the ocean water, which would otherwise be fine if the Santa Monica Bay didn't have thousands of drums, metal drums in the bay of how they were getting rid of pollutants. That bay is as toxic as can be. So imagine the toxic water being picked up, scooped by the planes, and being dumped on the houses. Now that's water, of course, but it's got additional toxins in it. I have not heard of anyone, Steve, that has gone into that Santa Monica Bay and figured out what all of those poisons are, because they figure the solution to pollution is dilution. But that bay is poisonous. When we went out in that bay, we would drop our boat off the Santa Monica Pier, and we would go all the way to Catalina Island. And no one told us not to fish for halibut along Malibu. We used to fish for halibut. And everything is so polluted because of all the drums that have been dropped in there over the years. All of you can look that up. This is happening all over the world. All over the world, they're dumping chemicals and poisons. So I want to, I guess, leave it here, Steve, because this is just beyond the pale. And understanding how we need to think now and go forward in truth and draw the line in the sand of who we are, because going forward, this is not going to bring the best out of people. I see so much illness now, mental illness. I see certainly the consequences of the frequencies. I see the consequences of the poisons that people have ingest or willfully taken. And it's going to be more. We know that there are more mRNA jabs to come, and it will be all managed through AI. We know that our lives will be managed at every moment, and we will be incarcerated into kill cities. And many people won't be afforded the opportunity to move into these quote-unquote kill cities, aka smart cities, international cities of death, because they will be killed before. Many people will not survive a few years of the consequences of the toxic air, the toxic blowing up of electric vehicles. In fact, I would suggest any of you that live in an apartment complex where people have electric vehicles, that, and you know, it's against the law. I will tell you this. It's against the law to not rent to people that have electric transportation items. It's against the law. So they can bring in an electric scooter, charge it in their home. They can bring in whatever they have that is an EV, an electric vehicle with a lithium-ion battery. And this can be, you know, they can target these batteries, and they do. And they can cause fires. Houses will burn down, not only from the lithium-ion battery and the smart meters, but we've got the wireless water meters, too, to think about. And all the increased frequencies that are pummeling through our atmosphere, going in and out of all of us with the Wi-Fi in our phones. I think soon, the more that people can hardwire and use their cell phones less, I know that that's really off-grid. To really be off-grid, it would mean that you're not using a cell phone.
That's right.
But then your level of the level of your communication would dwindle to nothing. But if you know what we're facing, then I'm supposing if you want to survive a little longer, if you want to protect as best you can the people that you love the most, I suppose those are some considerations that people are going to have to make. And also, I was hearing this, that people in Ukraine now are hiding in the forests. And that's interesting and horrific all at the same time, because I know many people won't survive well in the different kinds of climates that you face in the forest, and particularly when gathering food becomes your all-day project. And I just am watching how society is being dismantled and what people are having to do to escape the wars and to escape the hunger and famine, and literally leaving their countries and living in these refugee encampments by the millions for years and years and years.
And Deborah, it's only going to continue. That's what's so sad. It'll come here eventually. It'll be in Europe eventually. And eventually there'll be no place for people to go any longer.
Well, that is the plan, isn't it? This is an extinction level planned policy on multiple levels. We have the Deagle report.
Yes.
That talks about the percentages of people that are planned.
And this is 2025. We are at the Deagle report year.
That's exactly right. And the report from Iron Mountain talked about that as well. I'm really so appreciative with Off Grid with Doug and Stacy.
Yes.
Because they found another interview I did years back with the Oath Keepers in Southern California, where I was presenting the report from Iron Mountain along with the smart meters and other aspects of geoengineering or the weather weapons. And they found that. I had forgotten about that conference completely. And that's up. I think I sent that to you, Steve. People can see that. It's certainly on my site on stopthecrime.net. I'm very thankful for them. I don't understand. It's amazing to me that they're still able to be up on YouTube. I was taken off of YouTube a long time ago.
And sadly, I'm afraid, Deborah, it won't be long before they whack that for what they're saying there. And I thank God. I hope they don't. I really do. I've watched for what we're talking about. We'll probably get away with this one being just on Israeli News Live, but when I know there's some of the subjects that we're planning on going in, I'll have to run it through iConnect to be on the safe side. So if you're watching and you see that it's a 30-second clip in the near future, just go on over to iConnect, click on the link and go to it, because you guys are here, you want to hear the information, and we're actually curious about how many of you really are watching the video, because iConnect has a better counter in there, very, very state-of-the-art counter that can break it down to every country and how many people have viewed. And we're finding that normally it's about 5 times greater on certain subjects. Not every subject, sometimes they are fairly accurate. But on this type, it's normally about a 5 times difference. So we may be getting, Deborah, over 100,000, close to 120,000 views.
Well, I hope that people pick this information up and share it far and wide, because we simply need to get to more people so that at minimum, people will have a greater understanding of what they face. It looks like those concepts are increasing now. People are becoming more aware of the enormity of what they face, but I find that people will hone in on certain aspects of what they face, and they can't fly over and look at the broader picture. And so with that, I think I just want to say we're all part of the human family. I certainly want to do my very, very best in getting information out to all of you as best I possibly can. And just leave this earth having tried and done the next best right thing every single day. And I think that's what we all need to strive to do.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Deborah, so much for being on with us again. And we're trying to have Deborah at least once a week to share this information as long as we can, because it is vital. I mean, when you're just looking at Deborah's website, stopthecrime.net, just look. I mean, it seems like a lot of information, but just pay attention. Look on there. World Economic Forum, homeless, vaccines, Ireland reporting, mind control, USA Incorporated, weapons, fire, climate emergency. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Pick which one you want to look at, and scroll down. Once you click on it, like I clicked on World Economic Forum, and Deborah's going to have more links in there. She's going to have a comprehensive information that's written out about it. And you can go through there and get very well educated about the information that is there. So I can't encourage you enough to go there. And I actually had up on the screen there, Deborah, when you were talking, it took me a few minutes to find a good one on it, but I found Muammar Gaddafi and that great water project that he did, getting that primary water from the Sahara Desert, no less. And
yes, turning it into a beautiful orchards and growing and planning to feed all of Africa until the United States blew it up.
Yeah.
We blew it up. And we even blew up the water drilling equipment that he had purchased from London. They said that it looked like missile launchers. So
this is horrible.
I was talking to Paul Power about that because it was blown up, but he said it could all be reestablished, but nobody wants people to get to the water. So while it in parts are still there, people are broke, people don't have the money. He was certainly putting money in that direction to help his people. So I can only say that just don't drink raw water, don't drink the rainwater. Just don't. It's very poisonous, very toxic, and we'll get into that more later, Steve. And then also toxicsky.org, my other website.
Yes.
So again, Steve, thank you, and I look forward to another show here very soon.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Deborah, and give Lou our best as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope that you will definitely take the time, check out the information, also primarywater.org, and just check out all this information in the description below. We'll have all that, as well as some of the sites and videos that we've talked about today, like in the case of No One Wants to Talk About It, Rosalind Peterson, Off Grid with Doug and Stacy, where they posted that up there. We certainly appreciate you. Thank you, and have a blessed evening.